This says, I'm dubious about the ability of a sandbox MMO to succeed with the current younger generation of entitled gamers that can't delay gratification. And this is not this is something I see brought up a lot, especially as it relates to sandbox and the new generation of gamer in that regards. How do you read that? What do you think?
So I think actually this is interesting because I find that sometimes people think that you either have to be either or, right? Either you like this theme park games or you like sandbox games. And even though I've been a big proponent of sandbox games, what I think theme park games have done and has been great for the industry is they've taught us that actually maybe the early game experience does kind of matter. Like maybe we should introduce you to the story to give you some sort of backing as to what you should be doing. Because like you might say, well, you can do anything, but if I don't have an incentive to go to this zone and do something, then I might not actually ever go to that zone. So I think with sandbox games, the reason why to talk about the new generation and not wanting to have delayed gratification, I think that comes more from the fact that new player experiences oftentimes in sandbox games were horrible. I mean, they weren't just like bad, they were pretty bad. Like Galaxies, again, my favorite MMO, when that game came out, didn't have space, didn't even have missions. It just had like a terminal. You went there and it was like, go kill some womp rats, basically. And the womp rats didn't tell you what level they were, and they were often killing players. So many players quit and when you spawned in Mos Eisley because you got no direction. And next thing you know, you're just fighting whatever mobs show up. And so it's like, it's so hard to make a sandbox game like the old school sandbox games. And so I think people think, oh, so sandbox games, that's just like, make it like the old games were. And it's like, no, those games were also flawed, and we have to do a better job to go back to new player experience to make it a better experience for new players. You need to find some sort of way to join into the game. And Eve, actually, to bring up Eve again, does a good job of that because it lets you either join a what do they call it? It's a faction, right? Either you join a faction and then you can leave the faction and go join a guild.
Right.
Or sorry,
player corporation, I think is what they're called.
Yeah, and immediately they'll put you into a faction. So it's like you don't have to worry about, oh, who do I play with? Well, just you're put into a faction. If that's not fun for you, then you can go join a corp, your player guild or whatever else.
Yeah, Final Fantasy Yoshi P has said that they're looking to try to do something like that with 14, where it's like you join a class, like you're the class of this period of time for this grand company, and so all of a sudden, like you're integrated together forcibly, and then and then slowly then you can go and say, oh, now I'm actually a part of this other thing. But I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that was actually...
That was the end of your point then.
I think my issue with the initial comment from Zoila is that it tosses a huge, almost aggressive stereotype at a younger generation that is consistently pretty much leveraged. So you can go back and you can actually find old clips of boomers when they were our age being told all these ridiculous things by a group that was older than them. And now they're saying those same things. And so like when you're 10 years old, right, you have maybe an idea of what you want to be when you grow up. It's probably not that important, but most of how you're looking at life is in front of you, because behind you, like you only have so many memories and so many experiences. When you're 20 years old, so much of behind you was defined by school and times under parents. You have very little time of adulthood, and so much of your identity is centered on now and looking forward. When you're 100 years old, the people that I've met in my life that are 90 years old or greater are so grateful for the time they have now that it's really the present, and they really don't have aspirations on what they want to do beyond maybe next week, tomorrow. Maybe there's one or two more bucket list items. Cruise in Alaska seems to be a popular one in my family that they want to go do.
The newlywed and nearly dead cruise. That's what they call
most of it is centered on looking back at what their grandkids are doing, and that's where they cherish those memories and the life they've had along the way. And so we're on this gradient. And so this instant gratification, this desire for this, when I was a kid, if I wanted ice cream, I said that because I wanted it now, like right now.
Yeah.
And the journey wasn't part of it. And so like I look for something different in games today than I did when I was 10, not because games have changed, but because I have changed, because my expectations from life are more in line with somebody in their 30s. And that's not really something that's unique to 2020. That is the same set of goals and desires as somebody that was 30 in 1985, in 1955. And yes, the world's a little different. The technology is a little different. But I think that generally looking at a generation of people and saying, oh, they don't know how to wait and how to earn something. Well, of course they don't, because they haven't gotten to that point in their life. Like, I can look back now and say, wow, I got a degree and then I got a master's degree, and that was worth the work. And so when a video game says, hey, you're going to have to turn in dailies for 2 weeks to get this mount, I'm like, okay. But I didn't have that same relationship with time and things then. So I wouldn't say that the new generation is any more or less prepared to enjoy a type of game if it's a good game. Like, is it good? Period. And games have definitely gotten better. They've gotten a lot better, not just graphically, but games have matured. At no point has somebody set out to say, let's make games worse today. It's all been an iterative process. So I don't think it's necessarily a generational thing that'll change. I think that sandbox in general has just been iterative.
I think to kind of like put my thoughts, and we'll button up the show with this, is that just like what Justin was saying, where the new player experience needs to be more inviting, it needs to have that hook sooner. So the hook can't be like right now with 14, like, hey, Heavensward, like, you're gonna, like, if you get to Heavensward and you don't like it, I don't think anybody's gonna be upset at you. But it's like, if you don't get to it, you're like, you should at least try it, like, you should at least get there. So there's a part of that. But the other side of it is that these games aren't designed and developed in a bubble. Like, there are other games out there that then offer that. So it's like, if I'm sitting here saying, hey, I need to spend 400 hours before, like, I have, and I'm going to appreciate that, but then that's when that's the investment. Or I can go start having fun today. And when it's like, when I look at it beyond generation, generational, like as a millennial, I'm sitting here saying, like, as a parent, that's why cloud gaming for me is actually the best option right now, because I can within seconds be in a game, as opposed to, okay, I need to go, oh God, it's got an update. Like, right. It's to that point where, like, yeah, if I've got 3 hours, like, a small update's not a problem. No big deal. I remember updating 11 back in the day, was like, well, that's what the computer's doing today, and I'm going to go do something else. Thank God I have a console. But now it's like, okay, I'm downstairs, like, I got 15 minutes. I'm going to log on to Temtem from my phone on this wireless controller thing.
Right.
And just go catch a Temtem or two. And then it's like, okay, that was fun. Now I got to go and be an adult. And then maybe tonight.
Fast.
Right.
So fast now. For all generations.
Yeah.
I can just next page.
But obviously I don't like, if all the game offers is that quick hit of dopamine, eventually you're going to leave it and go to whatever else, because that's just going to be so repetitive. So it is to that point where I think the issue is design. And then, and as we see that go, I think, like, if 11 was a little bit more curated, because that's what, like, it struggles. That's why, people like have such a love for it, but it's where it's at. Like, it's to go in to play it today is to say, like, listen, there's a lot that the game is not going to teach you right up front, and it's going to be painful, but then it's not. And to say, like, if they could streamline that new player experience, and then it's like, in the new player experience eventually starts taking off the training wheels and taking off, like, all the hand holding. And then eventually you find yourself going, like, okay, now this is where the game starts. Am I invested enough to continue? Or was that fun and I'm just going to go do something else? And at some point it's perfectly fine to leave and go play something else. All right, guys, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No.
I mean, I agree with both of you. I think, at the end of the day, it's that was the big appeal of Guild Wars 1. The devs said it themselves. They wanted to create a MMO for people who had a job, who had kids, right, who had families, who, so I think talking about the different genre thing, it goes back to that. It's like, yeah, like, we want an MMO experience that's for the person who can put 10 hours in, or 20 hours a week, maybe even 30 hours a week. But we also want an experience for the person who can only put maybe 5 hours in.
Yeah.
And if we have an experience for both, I don't think there's a problem.